another episode of Hidden Stories Healed Now. Today we have a phenomenal guest with us today, Dr. William Cooper. And our subject today is really around loss. He is a surgeon, he's a veteran, and he's seen it all. And he's going to share some light on a story about a family and about how to deal with loss and the challenges. And we're going to delve a little deeper into what those secrets are. Welcome.
Thank you.
I am so glad to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here. Absolute pleasure.
Well, thank you. So please share with our audience about the family, where we talk a lot about loss and what's going on and the obstacles.
Sure. Well, I think in my practice and certainly in my profession, I see that all the time. The paradox is that one of the things that you and I discussed prior is how do you deal with that? How do you then personally deal with the fact that you're in a profession where people die all the time? And how do you approach that? How do you separate that professionalism from your compassion and your passion, the thing that brought you to it? So I tell the story of one family that I met. And the mom, there was 8 children in the family, sort of traditional African-American family, mom, dad. Mom died early, 46, pancreatic cancer. Several years later, the youngest of the 8 kids died, undiagnosed diabetes, went into the emergency room and basically was in what they call DKA, diabetic ketoacidosis. The next to the oldest sister died at 41 after open heart surgery. The brother, 45, died a few years later, dropped dead of a massive heart attack. And then the eldest in the family, the eldest brother, there were 4 boys and 4 girls, the eldest brother in the family died at 52 of AIDS. And we rarely see AIDS anymore. And then the eldest, which was a woman, 58 years old, died of ovarian cancer. And so this is one family. It kind of led me to think about what I do, and it sort of got me into the idea and the passion for serving people. Because if you think about each one of those stories, if you knew the details of it, everything in those stories really relates to everything that's wrong with our healthcare system. So when you start thinking about dealing with loss, okay, then you inject somewhat your passion and your thought and your empathy for those situations into what you do. And that allows you, quite frankly, to keep fighting, to keep going forward.
Wow, that is a lot of loss.
Yes.
And as going through this loss, and you deal with this, after all of these things were happening and you were involved with the family over time, how did you mentally continue looking at the fact of this one family? Did you stay in touch with them? Did you know them? How did you deal with those feelings?
That's my family.
Oh, Lord.
That's my mother, it's my sister, 3 sisters, and 2 brothers. I was the 7th of those 8 kids. And so throughout my lifetime, quite frankly, and if you can imagine all of these things happening over the course of the last 30 years of my life, I have been one to sort of think about it, and sort of my therapy, if you will, has been to inject or think about those stories as I practice medicine every day. And so that was sort of the professional side of it, because I could relate. And even my patients today will tell you, if there's anything about Dr. Cooper and culturally or anything else, he can relate. The majority of the people that I take care of every day are Caucasian, don't look like me, but they will tell you that Dr. Cooper, I can relate to him. There's something about him. And because of those experiences, I'm able to do that. Secondly, I will say on the personal side, it's a little bit different. Your mind has a way of playing tricks on you. I am 35-year Army Reserve veteran, went to 4 tours of duty. After that first tour of duty in 2004, I came back and was suffering from post-traumatic stress. I started doing things that were really kind of strange to me. I was never, first of all, my handwriting is horrible, like a lot of doctors. I started writing, I started journaling. And when I thought about that in retrospect, and as I went through some therapy and started thinking about why was I doing that? That was catharsis for me. It was therapy for me, but I was doing something else. I was writing an autobiography for my children so that they would know what I was feeling and what I was going through. And I was using that and applying that to my everyday kind of life so that they could look back and read that one day and say, this is my dad. Because if you think about it, everybody in my family, except for one sister and one brother and a father right now, died young. So having gone into a war theater at 37 with 3 kids at home, I'm like, okay, my fate is I'm going to be the one who's going to die in a war zone in Iraq. And your mind has a way of setting up defense mechanisms that are somehow in their own adaptive way, they become pathologic when applied in the wrong situations. And that's the essence of having post-traumatic stress.
You know, that's it's interesting on how our bodies reflect what we're dealing with and our mental, emotional, and physical health.
Correct.
You know, and the combination of all three and how they show up, especially when you talk about the different kinds of cancers, you talk about the different kinds of illnesses that were happening and things that weren't detected. We're going to take a station break. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more with Dr. Cooper around this situation and the things and how he dealt with it. We'll be right back.
Every story has a hidden element that is not often shared. Hidden Stories, Healed Now, with host Vicki Wright-Hamilton, seeks to share the hidden gems in real-life experiences. Our guests are ordinary people sharing their stories of overcoming insurmountable odds while providing hope and inspiration.
We often want to understand what are the tools that we can use to help us as we're dealing with these challenges. We're going through all of this anguish. We're in the middle of an obstacle. What can we do? Some people, they like to write. I encourage you to keep a journal. Let the energies of the things that are on the inside come through your hands onto that piece of paper and allow others to learn. Some people may really want to meditate. It's really about being calm and thinking and letting that energy guide you. And that can help you to overcome all of the anguish that you may be feeling when you're going through such a challenge. And lastly, some people want to get into a position where they can listen. Some people want to listen to advice. They want to go to somebody that they can listen. And so remember that there's nothing wrong with reaching out to get that help. Find a therapist if you need it. It's not a bad word. Welcome back. We were talking to Dr. Cooper and really understanding the challenges that he has gone through, and I'll say he's been through a lot. First of all, I do want to say that, you know, my condolences are with you, even those years later, because having lost family members myself, parents and a brother, very early, lost my brother very early, I understand that the complexity of what you're dealing with doesn't go away. They're always there, and they live in memories. So my thoughts and prayers are with you.
Thank you.
But let's continue this conversation as we continue to talk about, you know, you did this tour of duty. You wrote this autobiography for your children. You're thinking that you're going to be the next one dead in a war zone. And then you come back from war. You come back outside of the military.
Right.
Talk to me about the experiences of re-entering back with your family after all of this and experiencing these things, and after dealing with this, talk to me about how you were able to adapt. What were the things that you went through in getting back with your own family?
Yeah, I want to say that in a war zone, and even for somebody like myself that's not, out there shooting at people and actually engaging in combat, as a trauma surgeon and as a surgeon who's dealing with this, you see everything. As I told one troop who came in one night and he was sort of boasting that he had survived 11 IED attacks. I said that's fantastic. I thank God for that. I said, but let me just tell you something. We see every one of you who comes in here every night, and so the thing that we, after exploration, that really sort of set off this imbalance in my dopamine in my brain was seeing a troop come in one night, a soldier come in, and literally there's a body but no head. And so, you're there, you're operating every day, you go to your tent, you come back, you do your thing. And then all of a sudden one day you're on your way home and you go through sort of redeployment kind of deconditioning and things like that. And then you go home. And the first thing I did when I got home, I just kind of sat there. It was kind of like one day, my wife walked in one day, it was 2 or 3 days after I'd been there, and she just looked at me and she said, "You okay?" So yeah, I just literally sat there. I have no idea what I was thinking. But if there's any silver lining, if you think about it, the thing that I do every day, which is heart surgery, I operate on people, so I'm holding somebody's. So my dopamine level is up here all the time. I can't have B days or C days. I have to have A days. So when you think about the war zone and you think about being in the operating room and doing what I do, they match because you have to have that high level of vigilance. The problem is that it doesn't turn itself off at 2 a.m. So you find yourself waking up and heart pounding and breathing hard. And my wife is looking at me and she said, "You okay?" I said, "I think I am." So my jobs, where I sort of ingrained myself and really sort of dug really down into my job and working all the time. And I mean the numbers, if you think about doing open heart surgery, some days I would do 6, 7 cases.
Wow.
I mean, that's a lot. You just imagine there's 6, 7 people in a row that you've done a major operation on. So and I was really very, very good at it, very, very proficient at it. So work sort of took me away from that. But here's the one thing about the mind. You can cure a cold. People are going to get over COVID that we're going through right now. This always remembers. Your brain remembers. And the problem is that when it begins to remember at the wrong time, then that's where the separation and the dysfunction comes in. And so it leads to things, drinking, you can't sleep at night, all kinds of physical things. I had every test known to man. If you imagine I'm a physician, I was in there telling all my buddies, "Hey, check this, check that, scan this, scan that." But none of that, quite frankly, could reveal what was really going on inside of this.
So when you recognize, or should I say, when did you recognize it was this and you needed to do something different?
Yeah, so when I started having issues with this was 2004, and then I went back to work and just started, and then gradually over time things just sort of settled down. And then in 2010, I was deployed again this time to Afghanistan. Similar situation, constantly under mortar attacks and things like that. And when I came back, the same thing started happening. I was like, I don't have a heart problem. I don't have cancer. I've checked for everything. And so finally, something just hit me. And I said, I really need to go to the VA and get checked out. So I went to the VA, to the trauma recovery program, and had a really great psychologist. And one of the things, just the awareness of knowing what's going on with you in some ways is therapeutic, because now I can fight you. I can fight back now, okay? I can put on the boxing gloves and do everything I need to do to deal with this. And so that awareness, especially when it came to the ability to be able to be aware of that, was extremely important in recovering from it.
Wow. So now you've gone through this therapy. You're getting help in terms of moving forward. And you're dealing with this work every day You're dealing with the trauma every day. What were some of the things that you did for your outlets in terms of solutions? How did you help yourself? You know, what did you focus on? How did you change your energy and your direction so that you're not having to deal with those things?
Yeah. The one thing that was right in front of me was work. Go to work. Just work hard every day. You know, you got people around you. You are doing your thing. It takes your mind. Your mind is now focused on what's right in front of you. Okay. So I did a lot of work. But the thing that I learned at TRP, which is Trauma Recovery Program through the VA, is really going through and recapturing that moment and separating what was a past experience from what's really happening right now. I'll never forget when a few years prior to that, my son, it was Christmas and we were in the shopping mall, and I was like, I'll come in the mall, I'll just sit down and y'all go do what you do and we'll come back, we'll meet up. And then and one of the girls said, "Hey, Dad, what's this?" My son said, and he was like maybe 5 years old, "Daddy doesn't like shopping malls." He's been, moving. So you do things that are basically you to avoid something. I remember having a panic attack in traffic and things like that. The one thing, so going through that program was very, very helpful. But I will tell you to this day, as I sit here, the most powerful thing that I did was yoga, meditation. I really found a way to go to me inside here and really explore those feelings, re-experience those things. And so that I account, quite frankly, for my ongoing and continuing, and even being able to sit down and talk about that openly and not feeling the emotion of it. Very helpful.
Wow. So we're going to explore that a little bit further when we come back. We're going to take a station break. We'll be right back.
Every story has a hidden element that is not often shared. Hidden Stories, Healed Now, with host Vicki Wright-Hamilton, seeks to share the hidden gems in real-life experiences. Our guests are ordinary people sharing their stories of overcoming insurmountable odds while providing hope and inspiration.
We often want to understand what are the tools that we can use to help us as we're dealing with these challenges. We're going through all of this anguish. We're in the middle of an obstacle. What can we do? Some people, they like to write. I encourage you to keep a journal. Let the energies of the things that are on the inside come through your hands onto that piece of paper and allow others to learn. Some people may really want to meditate. It's really about being calm and thinking and letting that energy guide you. And that can help you to overcome all of the anguish that you may be feeling when you're going through such a challenge. And lastly, some people want to get into a position where they can listen. Some people want to listen to advice. They want to go to somebody that they can listen. And so remember that there's nothing wrong with reaching out to get that help. Find a therapist if you need it. It's not a bad word. Welcome back. I hope you have had an opportunity to listen to this episode and are enjoying it as much as I am. I'm learning a lot about how to cope and how to deal. So I want to ask a further question,
Yes.
Dr. Cooper, about this yoga. People have told me, you really need to do yoga. You really need to do yoga. And it's like, oh, I don't like to stretch. I don't want to do that. I can't get myself there. But I do meditate and I go through meditation. But talk to me about how you learned to do that. What is it that allowed you to really look inside? Is it the meditation part? What is it that really helped you?
Yeah. So yoga and meditation are one and the same. In fact, yoga in its purest form is really meditation. So we in this country, in this culture, have placed the brand identity on yoga to the asanas, which is the movement yoga, the sort of exercise piece of that. But yoga in and of itself is really about capturing that inner self, and it's about the meditation piece. And then you have various forms of that, Tai Chi and others, and different forms of yoga that require some type of movement. But within those movements, which is unlike the American culturalized or commercialized yoga, there's really, you separate out the meditation piece. But yoga at its true core is about not really separating those, but they're basically one and the same. You should be syncing your breaths with your movement. And in fact, in its simplest forms, it was not about movement. It was about the inner work that you had to do. So it really came to me as it really came, my psychologist recommended it. And in fact, she didn't necessarily recommend it. I started exploring. I need something, but I didn't want to take pills. And so, I began to explore, and it's interesting how what synchrony, because if you synchronize your mind to want something, everybody in this room has had this experience. You thought about something or you said something, and then within a period of time, it was there. I'm not talking about losing your keys. I'm talking about something you just said, hey, I needed to see somebody, and all of a sudden they show up. That's not by accident. That's called synchronicity. And so when she started to tell me this, I started, sort of thinking about what the therapy I was going through. It was like yoga. And so I started exploring it. I went on a trip, and Dan Harris, who's a weekend anchor for ABC, I think he's on, wrote a book called 10% Happier. It's the first book I wrote on or ever read on meditation. And I started trying it, just the 5 minutes of sitting by myself. And it's not about not thinking. God gave you the ability. You're supposed to think. It's like, it's about, it's one of those situations where it's hard to tell you what it is, but when I see it, I can, I can show it to you. But it's not about that. And I hear so many people say, I can't, I start my thoughts. That's okay. It's okay. You got to, how do you get to the point where you can be with yourself and do that?
Well, thank you very much for sharing that. We're going to check with our audience and see if we have a question.
Dr. Cooper, you are so transparent, and you don't find that much in your profession. How do you overcome the fear and the stigma of judgment from your colleagues to be so open and honest about the past trauma and things like that?
Thank you very much. Great question. I have no fear. I have no fear. I mean, because one of the things about going through those experiences is that fear basically controls you. It takes hold of you. It will essentially completely destroy you if you allow it to. So it's not that I don't ever have a feeling of, fear, anxiety. Somebody walked in here with a gun right now, I'd be a little concerned, okay? But I don't artificially create fear where it doesn't exist. And so I don't fear what other people really think. Sometimes people take me to a little bit extent. You'll say anything, or I was like, because I say what isn't here. But I also, it's guided by my passion. It's guided from a positive perspective. But here's the other thing. I've been put in a position to, a bunch of people said this, but it's attributed to Mark Twain, that the two most important days of your life are the day you're born and the day you find out why. I have been blessed to find out why. I can't live my why if I'm not open and transparent about who I am. And so that's how I handle that. And if people want to, stigmatize or, sort of add labels and these kind of, fine, I can't control that. And so I don't worry about it. I'm not afraid of it. I have to do this for me and for those who love me and want to be a part of my aura.
Wow, that transparency we talk about today, living our authentic self.
Yes.
Being authentic, being courageous, being that courageous leader, and everything that you're talking about is a behavior that exemplifies having that and being that way.
Correct.
So you're living your truth.
Right.
And it's one of those things that it's a blessing and a curse to know your why and why you're here, because we know the devil likes to get busy when you know why, to try to interfere with all of that. But at the same time, you want to continue to make that impact.
Correct.
And want to make that change. And so I will tell you that if I ever have any physical needs when it comes to, my heart, or I need a surgeon, I know who I'm calling in terms of moving forward.
Sure.
I think that it's great that you are sharing your story.
Sure.
And I know that, you have done a lot of writing, you publicize books and all kinds of things in terms of being able to let others know it's possible for them too.
That's correct.
So audience, join me in thanking my guests today. I so appreciate those insights.
Thank you.
I hope that you have enjoyed this episode of Hidden Stories Healed Now. I know that loss is hard, but it's something that we need to learn to cope and to deal with. As we talk about death, as we talk about sickness, it's something that's going to happen. We're going to live, we're going to die. Everybody's going to get sick one day, even if it's just a common cold. And our ability to understand our healthcare system, and you can make an impact. Vote, vote, vote. Let's go out there and help our health system and get the things that we need so that we can be healthy bodies and that we can continue as a healthy community. If we look forward to seeing you next week, I hope you've enjoyed this. And remember, every hidden story is a sign of freedom. See you next week.